Welcome to the DWRDNET Stationery feed with your host, Derek DeWeese. This is a podcast where we talk about all things stationery, be it fountain pens, pencils, typewriters, papers, and more. So sit back and relax and enjoy this week's episode. Welcome. We are at episode 6 of season 2, and I'm very excited to welcome my guest today, none other than the Pen Addict himself, Brad Dowdy. Welcome, Brad.
What's up, Derek? How are you?
Doing good. I really have been looking forward to this one because you're such a great advocate for the community and the hobby, and one of the OGs, an influencer before influencers were a thing, and it's always gonna be a great conversation. So I've been looking forward to this one. So if you're not familiar with Brad, definitely check out the links. We'll have information and we'll talk through in the episode about all of his social media and ways to see what the Pen Addict is up to. But let's get started with the basics. What got you into the hobby to begin with?
I guess I was pretty much born with it. I'm one of those long-term stationery lovers that grew up just caring about the things I wrote with, right? Like in elementary school, high school, college, work life afterwards, it always mattered to me what pen I used because I knew I got to experience some like cool pens when I was younger. I got to go to art supply stores and, back to school time's always great, but not just getting what's on the list that you have to get. So, trying literally everything to figure out the things that I liked was always something I've done, and I've kind of never stopped doing that. So yeah, I was just always into this stuff where it mattered. Like, the weight of the line on the page mattered to me, like how thick or thin it was, how dark the ink was if I was using a black pen. And this is way before I ever touched a fountain pen. These are just regular pens. Mostly roller balls, some ballpoints, not even really gels back when, I was first doing this stuff. So yeah, I've just always cared about what I used in that aspect of things. I guess it was also a product of my age where I didn't have as many digital devices around to capture ideas and capture thoughts, right? This is, I'm going to school in the 80s, and, we're lucky if we get, a 50-minute computer lab once a week, right? So everything's notebooks and paper and pens, and I just really leaned into that stuff. So, and later on, I decided to write about it, I guess.
No, and that makes sense because we're not that far difference age removed. I remember, elementary school, they had the school store and you had to go in and buy the new pencil or the new box of crayons or the new pencil box. And that kind of carried through. And then, high school, you find the Precisive E5 and it changes your life because you have to use that. And then you have to use whatever the next new, pen you find at the office supply store. So that really tracks because that analog nature. And I think there's a lot of us in the hobby who are returning to the roots of analog, and now we're helping to bring people in who were in the digital, realizing, hey, analog's cool. You should go try this out.
Yeah, that's true. The people now are coming in through it from the opposite direction we came through it. We came through it out of just natural habit. Like, that's what we had to do. Now people didn't experience the things that we might have and are kind of having to backtrack and go, oh, wait a minute. Those guys might have known something.
Yeah, I had my younger nephew send me a message a while back. He's like, hey, I want a good pen to write with. I was like, go find a Zento. That's something you can find easy enough, to use, because he wanted something like not a signature, just a normal one,
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't going to tell him to go hunting for a Zento signature. That would be
yes,
that would
literally.
be a cruel uncle trick.
No,
but
literally just
speaking of pens, so one. I know you go through this on a regular basis, but what do you currently have inked? What have you been writing with right now?
I'm getting a lot of joy from the Pilot Explorer, which I talk about a lot as just like a really just quality entry-level pen, and it's nice to see Pilot kind of lean into these a little bit. And start making more colors and start like marketing them a little bit more because it's a good fun pen. It does throw me back to those old Pilot Precise days where they, I won't go off on my diatribe about how this design is stolen valor, but this is some Pilot Precise looking pen, but like it's just a good quality pen. I have it inked up with Pilot Roshizuku Yamabudo. That's what I used. I wrote down some notes for today. I will literally never reference them, but like I have to write them down just to like, you kind of churn through some things we're going to talk about. So that one's getting a lot of use. I just recently inked up two other pens, the Aurora 88 Unicanera, I believe is the name. I always forget this one, the exact name, but it's just basically a completely blacked out piston filling Aurora with Robert Oster Jersey Devil, because I'm one of those pen influencer folks who got sent that bottle of ink. So I felt obliged to share that and test it. I quite liked it. Um, this one I've hesitated on, not hesitated out of any reason other than just I have a lot of things I'm using. I don't keep up dozens of fountain pens inked up, but the Twisby, I think was it just called the Cosmos? Kind of this blue swirl. I don't know if that was the exact name of it, but it came out late
There's so
last year.
many. I mean,
I know.
it's
So
another day of the week, so there's another Twisby. So
yes, yeah, exactly. Have you seen Bahama? Right? It's like I have, and it's a lot. But this is probably like only the second Twisby like I've kind of bought for myself to keep. And I inked it up with the Scriptus Toronto Pen Show ink, which is a teal. It's called T. Teal. It's really good. I have used extra fine nib in that one, extra fine nib in the Unicanera, fine nib in the Pilot, which is probably finer than both of those two. I have I always forget what model this is of the Franklin Christoph Olive. It says on the barrel.
looks
46,
like
46.
Yeah, 40. I was going to say 46M because it doesn't have the
Yeah.
clip.
Yeah. So I got this one at the Atlanta Pen Show a couple years ago, and they had some black nibs there. So I got a black nib on that one, which I really like. And that has the Mont Blanc super neon polar, whatever they call it, the Star Walker polar.
Star Walker.
Yeah. That one's great. God, I could do the whole show like this. Last two. I've just been using these a lot. So I'm kind of in a mid rotation right now. So I've been using these two a lot for the last month. So the Pilot Custom 74 Teal and the Sailor Pro Gear Mini Muette, which was a Nagasawa edition. It's called the Seagull. There's a little seagull there on there. Black Sailor Nano Black cartridge on the short pen, and then a Pilot cartridge, their turquoise cartridge from like their mixable Pilot parallel sets. So they do some. It's a shock to people when Pilot makes different color cartridges that aren't the expensive Arushizuku ones. So they do have some basic standard colors that they sell. That's it for fountain pens. I have a couple standard pens. Do you want me to show you those?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about pins. We're talking. I mean, this is what you do.
Well, there's only two more. I know. Well, that's why this could be like literally the entire show. But there's only two more. So I got the Pure Malt Uniball Jetstream from Japan recently. My friend Jacob at Fude Fan sent me this. I really enjoy the shape of this one because it's a little bit bigger than like a standard Jetstream, but it's not a multi-pen, right? It's a single cartridge pen, but it has just a little bit bigger barrel diameter than some of the regular Jetstreams, and I like that. Last one, a little bit of self-promotion, and shout out to you and Addie last episode as well. I finally got my own Clickstream, which I was waiting until we got the purple restocked because I couldn't steal one yet because we didn't have very many. And I put in a 9mm mechanism into it, which is not my thing, but I think that's going to be something interesting. I haven't played around with this one as much as some of my other stuff, but the lead size is a little bit different for me, so I always like to try the thing that's not for me. I just reeled off 100 extra fine nibs, which are all for me, but I still do try to mix it up because I need to learn this stuff and figure out, hey, maybe I'm missing something.
No, and I've done that recently with some of the spoke pencils I've picked up because to me, mechanical pencil was always 0.5. That's just what you used.
Yeah. I wouldn't have known there was a different size. Yeah.
Yeah, I love 0.7, and then the 0.9, I've been writing with that some. I think yesterday I was using it, and I was like, it's just different enough that I'm like, I like it, but I think 0.7 is going to be the one that's the sweet spot for me.
Yeah. I
But
find
it's
myself going from point 0.5, which, like I was saying, is like when you grow up with this stuff, you don't realize that there's something different besides that. That was just the lead size. I don't even know if I could have called it by its measurement. But my second favorite pencil type is probably like a 2 millimeter clutch pencil. So I have this huge gap between like the point 0.5, really, really fine, which what I like, but then this 2 millimeter Caran Dash fixed pencil lead. I don't know, it really works for me. So that 9 is kind of something somewhere it's bridging that gap, and I'm kind of enjoying it.
no, and I recently also picked up some clutch pencils, which I had never used. My dad was an engineer, and there was always one
Hmm.
like in the desk drawer when I'd steal his mechanical pencils that I wasn't supposed to, and I didn't know what it was, but the container of the lead or the graphite, and now I'm like, man, these are great, and I've gone way too far down the rabbit hole of trying them out, but there's something about because I also write with tiny nibs, extra fine, the finer the better normally, but the wider the pencil to a point, and two seems to be the happy
Yeah.
medium, and it's kind of a mixture. But one thing you said is talking about the cartridges. When it comes to ink, are you generally a bottle or a cartridge, or just kind of like to mix it up? How do you approach your ink that you're using in your daily drivers?
I definitely mix it up. I probably use more cartridges than people would think. It's still not the predominant way I fill pens. What did I say over here? I have one, two, three, four, five, 6 pens inked up, two are cartridges. I'd say that's a pretty fair ratio for me. Um, so about a third of the time I'll have a cartridge. I I like to switch things up a lot, right? Um, and sometimes I just want to pop in a cartridge and not have to deal with it. Other times I get cool inks like Jersey Devil or T. Dot Teal, and I was like, "Oh, sick! I've got to ink these up." So that's always going to be the predominant way. I bet people would be surprised at how many cartridges I used. Granted, they're just a terrible idea for your wallet and for the environment, but like I have some pens I only use specific cartridges in.
No, and that makes sense because most of the time, if people are watching your streams or seeing what you're reviewing, all the smaller ink makers, they're not making cartridges because
Yeah,
that's just cost prohibitive. So they're sending bottles. So that would track that people aren't seeing, when man, I just need to write, pop a
yeah,
cartridge in and
yeah.
go, you know,
I
because I
I
know that I kind of ignored cartridges, but when I did a video last year on going back to starter pins for a week, I was like, man, these are actually pretty good. And you kind
yeah,
of get that uh appreciation that you didn't know you needed for sometimes there's something to like go back to the basics of pop in a cartridge,
yeah,
blue or black, whatever it happened to come with, and go. And that's kind of a nice thing about, especially if you're trying to help someone into the hobby, if you're using it, if people see you using a cartridge and you're not a hesitant, you don't have to go buy 12,000 bottles of ink and whatnot. You can if you want, but you can get away with a basic Cocuno or a Preppy with a cartridge and still have a great writing experience.
yeah. That's why I always like the Pilot so much because I use Pilot cartridges. I use Pilot Blue Black cartridge in a lot of my pilots because I love their blue black ink. And I'll use the stock Lamy blue cartridge. I don't know if they just call it blue or like royal blue, but just their basic like corporate blue. Somehow that ink really really works for me. So that's probably my two most used cartridges. And then I'll dabble, in some of the other companies that you know test a wider color range, like a Diamine or something. They'll do a bunch of colors, and I might pick something up in a cartridge that I don't already have in a bottle.
Yeah, I think I have very few cartridges, but I have a one of the mixed boxes of Diamine and then
Yeah,
like the Diamine purple that I use in my Lilliput.
yeah. I use
Just
Diamine Bilberry. It's
yeah,
like I don't have a bottle of it, but it's a cool purple color that I can throw in like a Kaweco Sport. Like that's
yeah.
just what I'm gonna do.
So the next question is one of my favorites that I've asked everybody. What's your favorite stationary adjacent item? And by that I mean case, book weight, sleeve, bag, something that is not pen, paper, or ink that you use all the time. You just can't see yourself not having with you to use on a regular basis.
I think it's two things that kind of rise to the top, especially. as I sit here at my desk. Like I work from home, so I'm around my stuff all the time. So all the pens I've shared live in a stationary stack Alfie, a nice orange one. Um, so I use that. Just it's I like the basically the two-tiered layout of the long and short layouts, because I tend to use like mini pens and shorter pens, and I just they could fit in the regular long slots of any other case or anything like that. But I like having that visual of having the separation. Second, I'm pretty tied to my plotters just for day to day usage. I have two plotters. I've used them both today. Like that was my work plotter, if you will, and then this was me like taking notes earlier in a different plotter where so like this first plotter is all plotter paper inside with their formatted, planner stuff, weekly, monthly calendars, to-do lists, and blank paper. Where I've taken the second one has two plotter papers in there, but they're both weird. This is the weird paper book. So I have Subame, paper. I have Canopus paper. I have Grapholo paper. I have blue plotter paper. I have letterpress plotter paper. So this is like my experimental book that I use more for just like general notes, brainstorming, things like that. And then the other one's just like work. Like those are my non-pen accessories that see multiple times a day use.
No, and that's a good tie-in for a question I forgot to ask of the big
Uh-oh.
three, and you just covered it somewhat. Papers. I mean, aside from your plotter papers, because you, like you said, you have a variety in the personal non-work, and I get that too because I have my work plotter, an A5 that's just for work, and then I have my calendar slash I've got it one in front of me for taking my notes and whatnot. But in general, do you go back to the same go-to papers, or like in your your personal size plotter there, do you like to experiment and just have variety?
Definitely more experimental to the point where it's challenging to stick with one thing. Especially given what I do and wanting to have information about a lot of different things. Um, that's why this plotter, um, in the Shiranami Blue, the personal size one, is just a mix and match of tons of different papers. So I can try different inks, different pens. So I don't keep, at least this year. Last year I kept like a standard A5 notebook, and it was a Life notebook, which was glorious. It's fantastic, soft-sided graph. I prefer graph paper when possible. Dots are good too. Um, but something like Life, Mormon, Midori, you throw any format at me in any of those papers, I'm going to be happy. Just from a paper quality perspective, they're so consistent and just so well made. I'm testing out one of the new Mormon hardcover books right now. I just got the little A6 one. I just needed to know, is that paper different than their spiral bound paper, which is so freaking good. I was like, if you've managed to screw this up, I need to know. And so far, reports are in. It's pretty good. But that's why I like having a portable system like this where I can swap things out, um, try different things, test different things, because I pretty much could never fill like a standard A5 notebook these days the way I just move around. I don't even know how many notebooks right now with like reviews and ink testing and drawings and swatches. That's why these plotters stay on the desk, and then everything else I take off and go grab it when I need to do something specific with it. So, to answer your question, it's everything and nothing specific.
No, and considering what you do, that makes perfect sense. You're in a unique position when it comes to what are you using to write with or write on, because your part of your job is to try all the new things or try
Yeah.
the different things and give your opinion, because people have come to expect that of, oh, it's the Pen Addict, he's going to have the new paper that it has to try out and see. Because even I came full circle in the ring bound system. After
Mhm.
college, I was Filofax personal size. That's what I used. And then I didn't use a calendar, because I work in IT. So I went more digital. And now I'm back where I've got two A5 plotters and A5 Me Plus, a personal, I'm back to the ring bound because, like you're talking about, the flexibility of being able to take stuff out. Like today, I was for my work one, taking some stuff out, throwing it in the typewriter, typing it out so it's a little bit easier to read for stuff I'm referencing often, and then putting it back in the same spot and not having to, go 12 pages in to find the server name I'm looking for type thing.
Yeah.
So the flexibility there is really, it comes, has its advantages for sure.
Yeah, I didn't think that was something that would ever click with me. Like I just why would I need that? I can have 5 notebooks and just do, this can be work and this can be this and this can be that. And believe me, I've tried. Um this is this is working pretty well for me right now.
Well, and that, I think that goes back to, the analog upbringing. You had a different notebook for every subject in school. You
Yeah.
didn't have a computer you're carrying around. You had the red one was for math, the blue one was for
Mhm.
history, that
Yeah,
kind of thing. And now you have your work plotter, you have your play plotter, and you kind of segment that out. And it's when one's in, you're in a different mindset. At least for me, I know if I'm in
yeah,
the work one, it's okay, very different mindset than, oh, this has the different paper. Or I'm, going to use more variety of writing utensils in the personal one than I might for work. So it has that consistency look. But
totally.
let's get to the main topic. So, you are the pen addict. How did the
Hmm.
moniker of the pen addict come to be? What's the origins of behind the name pen addict?
It was a grave error, Derek. Don't be young and on the internet, chat. It's not a good thing. No, I literally no clue. Like clearly at this point in my life, and as long as I've been doing this, absolutely no thought went into calling my blog the Pen Addict when I launched it. I was like, oh, I guess I'm just a pen addict, so let's just do that. And this was 2007 when I started the blog. And I was like, oh, that seems fine. And like, if I started this blog like 5 or 10 years ago, it probably wouldn't be called that. There are some domains I own just in case I ever really need to do that. Like I clearly don't mean like anything untowards from that name. It just kind of happened, and like literally people just refer to themselves as that. Just like I'm addicted to stationery and pens, and there's obviously not great connotations with that. So literally no thought went into that. Um, and it kind of latched on. We did lean into it a little bit with the logo, um, which is great. But yeah, even myself, I still kind of think sometimes about changing it. I have this whole concept for a rebrand. I just never get around to it.
I think at this point it's too far gone.
Probably.
It's like I said earlier, you're one of the OGs. So
Hmm.
now it's an expectation, it's
I guess it's kind of like been around so long. It's like completely changed connotation, just from like real meaning, like the word just changes when you use it so much. So yeah. Yep.
yeah.
So literally no thought into that whatsoever. I was actually thinking back, because you shared this question with me, and I was like, no idea, just completely random. And these days it would be something more maybe thoughtful or thought provoking than that.
No, it's like the DWRDNET. Sometimes
Hmm.
people ask, I was like, well, in year 2000, I needed a domain. So I used my initials and got DWRD.net.
Yeah.
And then when you need to have a name, when we were on the internet, you didn't have to add 12 numbers after a thing.
Right.
You had a lot more choice. Oh, that's a 4-letter domain. That's short. Of course I want that. I don't
Right.
want like really long domain. And then now I'm kind of stuck with it. I mean, it works
Yeah.
out well because it's initials and it,
Yeah.
kind of
I've
has a thing.
only I've only just gotten out from like old message board names from like the 90s, like to
Yeah.
where you finally like change those things out. I was like, oh yeah, you were really not bright back then.
So you kind of already answered a little bit of the next question I had of one thing of, as you've progressed in the hobby and, made it into a career, what is something you wish you would have known when you got started that if you could go back and tell yourself that you'd be like, oh, yeah. So just so you know, in the future, don't do this or pay attention to this. What's one of those things if you could go back and say, hey, Brad, do this, what would it be?
There's a lot of things. Um, just on the thinking about this question, one thing I didn't know when I started this was how cool the stationery community actually is. Because when you're into this kind of stuff, and like when I was starting the blog, you don't know that anyone is into pens, right, as a thing. And you don't walk around like your office talking about like, oh man, look at this sick Pilot G2. Like, oh, I found a .38 Pilot G2. That is awesome. And you start sharing it with your friends in the office. I didn't know, like at the time, that there was other people into this stuff. And seeing that, obviously uplifted me and like kept me going, that other people were into this. And just broadly, the stationary community as a whole is just kind of unbelievable. Like, I didn't know this going into it. There was no intention of turning this into a job or, you know, doing anything like that. So I thought that was, I was thinking back, I was like, that's pretty cool that I got to be part of a bigger thing that gets people excited and distracts people and makes them happy and things like that. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool. Thinking back about it at it now, like you maybe go about things differently because there's just so many different things, which we'll talk about later. Just on being online and things like that. So that was cool. On the personal front, in getting into fountain pens, learning that it's okay to be messy with this stuff. That was something I resisted, like seriously, for a long time. I didn't want ink on my hands. Well, guess what? If you're into fountain pens, you're going to have ink on your hands. You're going to have ink on your face. You're going to have ink on your shirt. You're going to have ink on your shoes. You're going to have ink on the counter. And it's awesome. Like, it is so, like, I cover my hands in ink, like when I'm cleaning pens or whatever. I could not care less, but I used to. I used to not understand how a fountain pen worked and how the ink was delivered like through the nib and to allow you to write. And getting that ink on the nib, like if there was ink on top of the nib, I would sit there with a paper towel for like 30 minutes and try to just like scrub it off from the edge, which is impossible. Like if everyone's done this, you can't do it. Like it's impossible. It bothered me so much. And getting over those facts to allow myself to get messy, allow myself to rip pages out of a notebook, allow myself to throw an expensive pen in my pocket and leave the house and put my keys in the same pocket. Just giving myself that freedom to use my stuff and not care and have fun. That was freeing. Like that's something I kind of bucked against in the beginning, just for my own personal usage. Couple other smaller things. Don't hoard limited edition inks because the company will make the same ink later. And you'll pay less for it. That one I learned back in the day is like, your favorite ink is a limited edition and it's sold out now. Man, you better buy 3 bottles. Ask me how many of those bottles I still have. At least 3. At least 3, because they just come out with the color again and call it something else. Or there's so much ink out there now, you can find something close. So that's advice. That's life advice, chat. Don't hoard limited edition inks because there'll be something else out there, if not the exact same one later.
Well, and one nice thing about that is there's people like Olive Octopus Ink. Mm-hmm. Lisa is like a walking ink encyclopedia. So right. You can go watch her streams or something and say, hey, I need an ink that's similar to this. This is my favorite ink and I can't find it anymore. And then the swatch cards are kind of going to come out. You're going to be like, oh, well, here's this one or this one or this one or this one that are so close that most people wouldn't even realize it's different cards. But, for those of us who are pickier in the community, like, oh, well, that one's just slightly darker. It's not perfect, something like that. It's a weird hobby where you can get as stingy or as, freed as you want.
Totally.
And
guilty.
There's an option for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the resources we have now are just amazing. And again, community is awesome. Speaking of which, last one, related to community, I guess. Um, don't fight on the internet over stationery. I've been guilty of that. I will probably fail that test again at some point. Um, but yeah, that's not a good look for anybody.
I think that's
That's
more
something
than
I learned a long time ago, like probably a decade ago at this point. I was like, oh yeah, that was stupid.
yeah, you don't read the comments, and if,
Yeah,
it's just easier to ignore and move forward,
yeah,
because that really applies more than the stationary hobby. That's just the
sure.
internet as a whole.
Yeah,
Just if you don't like it, move on.
yeah,
Someone might just continue, and
yeah. Don't
it's
yuck
very
others'
easy to
yum.
ignore.
Yeah, don't yuck yums. Like I've learned that the hard way over the years, and now it's something I very strongly believe in. So like, there's something out there for everyone, and we all like different things, and it's just exciting that someone wants to write.
No, definitely. So, for those who might not be familiar, in the past, you were involved with Nock, and then now you're part of Spoke Design.
Mhm.
So, what have some of your favorite parts been of, you made stationery into your career, and then from there, you were able to start a business and now be part of another business. So, how did you find that good bridge of the gap between the hobby and profession and kind of make it all work to, make products and be involved in a different on the not the enthusiast side, but on the vending side of the hobby, because that's a unique um viewpoint where you started as a, supreme enthusiast, and now you've been able to carry that into businesses that help support your livelihood.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and it's something think about all the time, being involved currently in Spoke and Knock in the past, and it's just always learning something every day. Like it's crazy to be involved in like making things. And Knock, even though it doesn't exist, and for people who might be listening to this for the first time, is essentially a pen case company. We made like nylon pen pouches and cases, and it was born out of just a great connection, random connection with someone, my partner Jeff in Knock, um, who didn't know anything about stationery but could sew and was, you know, really good at sewing like bike bags and like nylon type of bags. And I wanted like a nylon pen case. I didn't want like a traditional leather pen case. And he happened to have a friend that knew who I was and put us together. And we just kind of hit it off in how we like to design, how we like to create, um, how we felt that we had something to say in as far as this design goes, even though the intention, before even making a company, I just wanted to make a pen case I wanted to use, right? Because there was nothing at the time that spoke to me at all. There was obviously some things that were close and some things that had pieces of a concept of what I wanted to make, but not the complete style or aesthetic or design that I wanted. So Knock was super cool because we could like, I could have an idea in my head. Jeff could throw a roll of fabric on the floor, chalk it out, cut it, and stitch it up, and we'd go yay or nay. Like, the prototypes we'd go through were just endless. Trying to figure out, do we have something here? And eventually we decided we had enough to where we thought we could sell them. And we did for a while. The business ended up shutting down. I don't even know what year now, but I don't even call it a failure or anything because it was such a happy time of my life doing that. And hearing people still talk about like those products just put a smile on my face, even like me, continuing to use some of our products and seeing those things out there. It's really a great time that I had with Knock, learning so much about business, making so many mistakes, like just absolutely, like, I don't know that we'd be in business today or not, but man, I certainly didn't make it easy with some of the decisions I made. But at the time, I'm just trying to figure it out. Like, I'm not sure. So it was great for those type of things. Like I definitely learned a lot of things not to do, and learned how hard it is to make something. Like the iteration time for physical goods is astronomical. Like that is something I could never explain well enough, even now with Spoke. The delivery times from a concept in my head to getting into someone's hands is astronomical. Um, and that's always hard to explain nowadays because we're used to like faster turnover, like digital goods and like
Yeah.
things. We can stand up a website in a day and do all kinds of stuff and start accepting payments. Bam, and you're done. Physical goods are. Whew, I always say manufacturing is hard. It doesn't get easier. So we had Nock for a while. It was great. Love every minute of it. And you shut that down. And then I'd already started working for myself at the time we closed it down. I have to go back and look. It was probably pre-COVID, probably like 2019, 2020. I'd have to go look and see. But it's been a while. And then Spoke came about because my partner now, Brian, who started Spoke, started doing Kickstarter for mechanical pencils. And I had seen his work through Kickstarter because I was an avid Kickstarter backer at the time, not so much anymore. And I didn't back the mechanical pencils. It wasn't like totally for me. And then he came out with a model called the Model 4. And I was like, this is the coolest mechanical pencil I've ever seen. And back that project. And I started talking to Brian. I think I reached out to him first. I'm not even positive, but I'm pretty sure I reached out to him first. I'm like, hey, so I love what you're doing. There is a refill I've always wanted to make a pen with, but it doesn't exist. And it's the Uniball Signo DX refill. It's UM151. It's not hot swappable with pretty much anything on the market. And I said, this Model 4 pencil design, if we could do something like this, but in a pen for that refill, because no one else is doing it, like, could you do something like that? And he's like, well, why don't we talk? And then we just started working together. It's literally both of my business opportunities came about that way. Like Jeff showed up at a Starbucks and dumped a duffel bag worth of samples on the desk. We had never met before in person. Threw the samples on the desk. In 5 minutes, I'm like, yep, we're going to do this. Like, I could just tell. Like, none of these are going to work for stationary people, but I know what this is, and I know that we can make it work. And the same thing with Brian. Brian is not a pen person, not a fountain pen person, not a standard pen person, just mechanical pencils. He was completely happy just cranking out mechanical pencils. And I said, let's do this. And now he's just off the chain with pens. I can't stop. I can't slow him down. Still with the pencils, but it's been fun to work. I've had the pleasure of working with two people who are top tier designers. Jeff in like textiles, fabrics, Brian in metal, essentially, to be able to take what I have in my head and translate that into a physical good. I can't do that last part. I can tell you the front end, what I want, and then what I think other people might want that too. But then I'm not doing the drawings in CAD for the Spoke roadie. Yeah. But Brian's going, oh, this is how the pen should be, right? And I'm like, yeah, and this has to be weighted this way, and we have to do it this way, and you can't have any tip wiggle, like infinite options. And Brian will just go, CAD design. Then he'll like 3D print it. And he's like, how's this? I was like, this is horrible. Let's change this. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's how a pen should work. And then we go. Like, I've been very lucky to work with people who are so much smarter than me. I just happen to know, like, what a pen should feel like or what a pen case should feel like and how that design should end up feeling. I can't get us all the way home. So super lucky in both of those aspects.
No, and if you're not familiar, one of the Nock designs does live on through Rickshaw. And, the Sinclair, it's a staple. And, so there's probably a lot of people who don't realize that that started from an enthusiast who started a business, who the business, life happens, you change pace, but then
Mhm.
the design still lives on. Because how many people have a Sinclair or four or five,
Yeah.
you know, filled with
Yeah.
different things?
That was important to me, and I wasn't sure at the time. Like, I mean, I sat on that for years, right? Like, that didn't happen for years, and I was on. I mean, straight up, I was hesitant. I was like, just it was our design. I could sell it. Maybe I want to remake it one day or whatever. I was like, you know what? Like, if we can put the name out there and the product name that we use, the Sinclair, keep that, keep the design essentially the same. Actually, Mark at Rickshaw actually made some improvements to it. Things in the pen world changed to where we adjusted some sizings like fractionally. Like you wouldn't know the difference from our original products, but it's a better product now, and I'm very glad that we had that partnership to where we get the Nock label on the inside of those cases, and it's called what we originally called it, and it's our design. Yeah, I'm super proud of that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a way for the legacy to live on,
Hmm.
and end up in, because that's probably the first case a lot of people get. Because, like you said, leather is
Hmm.
not for everybody,
Yeah,
but some sort of bright colored, cool pattern, whatever. Oh, I like that
yeah,
design. That's where someone new is going to be like, or now, especially with you can choose custom fabrics, they
yeah,
can really customize it. Like we can choose our pen and ink and paper combo. So it's a
yeah,
neat way for that to live on for those who are not fortunate enough to own a brass town like I have from the
yeah,
Atlanta Pin Show in 2016 or
yeah,
2017,
for sure.
type thing.
Yeah. And it's super cool. Like those cases, like it's two very disparate businesses, right? The cases are pretty simple and and like the idea of like a pen case is pretty simple, but you have to execute it right when you're dealing with fabric because that fails the field test real fast as opposed to leather. Um, so I'm glad that like it kind of lives on in a slightly different way now, and people still get to experience that because like you said, it could be a lot of people's first case because it just kind of makes sense. Like it's just easy. Oh, it's like three pins and I can slot some paper over here and it zips up to where I can protect it. People can understand that. Spoke's a lot more complex than that. That's a different animal.
Well, but one thing I like about Spoke is the modularity. You can literally say, I want the knurled grip, I want this color, I want this. So you can kind of customize even within a fixed set of options what's going to work for you. So that's something I've really appreciated. And because for me, it's all the knurl, like some of
Yeah.
the best knurling of anything. And I was like, I need a knurled of each lead size, and then a couple of the Model 8, just because that knurling is so good. Because I tend to grip pretty tight because I write
Hmm.
small, and that for some reason clicks with how I write. And that's, once I tried that first one, you really it ended up costing me a lot of money because I've bought a lot of Spoke products since
Sorry
then
about
because
that.
that that knurling is just too good to not own all the options. But
I appreciate that. Yeah, Brian and I are kind of masochists in maximalism, I guess. We don't make a minimalist pen product. We make what we jokingly call a maximalist pen product. Like, do you want to do X? Okay, we'll try to accommodate that, which is pretty insane business practice. Like, I don't know that I'd recommend that, but now that we're thousands of SKUs deep, I, I mean, we'll just keep going. We'll just keep going. But like, we've worked on it for years to add a little bit more modularity with every design iteration to allow more customization. Before, like the pencils were very fixed. Like this is the entire package you got. And now it's getting closer to like Build-A-Bear. It's not all the way there yet, but like don't be surprised if it is one day.
no,
That's not
and
like
that's
that's not like a secret I'm spilling. It's just like that's just how it's gonna go.
no, I mean, for anybody who hasn't gone, and like I said, there'll be links, go look at the Spoke website and see all the options that you can get on a pencil. What
Yeah.
lead size do you want? What tip do you want? What knurling? What pattern? The options, there's a multitude, but that's what's cool because you can find the fit that works for you. That, like for me, I got a point 0.3 and I write too hard. So every time I try and use it, I break the lead,
Yeah.
so
I can't
that's,
do it either.
it's a learning thing. But now I know if I'm doing something light sketching, I'm going to go for that one because it's easier to erase because I'm not going to push as hard because I can't, or it's going to break the lead. So it's a learning process. But in terms of your
Mhm.
podcast about pens, you've passed the 700 episode mark. How did the idea of the podcast come to be, and has become a staple that people, when you changed the recording date earlier, or I guess towards the end of last year, it threw some people off their routine because they're so used
For
to like
sure.
listening at a certain time and listening live and participating, kind of alongside. But talk about the podcast and it's kind of how it came to be and how it's progressed, over this multitude of episodes over the years.
Yeah, it came to be begrudgingly on my part. I had to pretty much get talked into it. So I started the blog in 2007, started writing about pens, just doing my little simple reviews. The whole idea of the blog was I'm trying all these pens anyway. I can't find any information about them online. So I'm going to buy a pen, I'm going to write a few words, and I'm going to take a picture of it, and I'm going to tell you if I like it or not and why. And so that was in 2007. That's when it started. And then a few years on, I started to get, some followers and talking to people. And I had a guy named Patrick Roan reached out to me, who we were mutual followers of each other's work. His writing I had followed, so we would talk, probably on Twitter at the time. And then he was a follower of my blog and would share things. Were mutually sharing, content that we liked, and kind of ended up running in the same circles. He had a podcast with a guy named Mike Hurley, and their podcast was called Enough. And the general conceit of the podcast was minimalism focused. And Patrick was a fountain pen user and had a journaling habit. So at one point, he told Mike the topic kept coming up enough that Patrick said, "Oh, we should get Brad on to just come talk about pens because I love pens and I want to talk about it." And Mike's like, "Yeah, I was really into pens, when I was younger and things like that." So they had me on as a guest. I don't even remember how I recorded that episode now that I think about it. And we just talked like this, because clearly I can talk about pens. And we finished the show, and we're in the just after room talking after the recording's done. And Mike at this time already had kind of like a mini network of podcasts. He was doing like maybe 2 or 3. Doing like a technology show, a general show, and this show with Patrick. And he said, "Have you ever thought about doing a podcast about pens?" And my famous answer to that was, "That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard." Which it is. Like, you can't think about that, right? Like, that does not compute. Especially if this was in 2012 when we started the podcast. Like, that does not compute. So I like, from that conversation, I was pretty like, I don't need this in my life. What am I going to talk about? And he stayed on me. Like, the next week, he's like, "I actually think that we should do this, and I'll do everything. You just got to show up and talk about pens just like you did." And I was like, "Okay, sure, we'll try. This will be a good experiment. We'll try. We'll have a few episodes. I don't know what else I'm gonna have to say about pens, after maybe 10 episodes or whatever." And turns out I had almost 15 years worth of content of podcasts to say about pens, and literally no end in sight. I get more excited to do that silly show about pens every week, once a week, every week, for almost be 15 years. God, I think we just actually passed it. It was February is our anniversary. I have to think about that. So yeah, like, I get so much joy from doing that. It's unbelievable. I even like trip myself out. Like, why am I cracking up so much? Why is this so silly and so fun? And there's clearly a lot of reasons for that. Like, we all need this escapism, and talk to a buddy about pens like this, and think about how you know, make fun of companies doing silly things, and like it's such nonsense, but I care about it too, right? Like I care that we had do a good show and that people enjoy listening, and they leave with the end of the day with a smile on their face, and they get mad when we change the schedule because they're used to listening to it at a certain time. So yeah, like that's one of my favorite things I do. Like I don't do any not favorite things, but that one might be number one.
Well, and it evolved to a collaborative thing too, because with the relay platform where people are able to listen live,
Yeah,
you know, that's something that's unique. You know, someone might not want to hear it live. So if there's some sort of, you go off topic or something, it might not end up in the edit, but something about the live broadcast and it's kind of co-working and background, listening has become so commonplace for us now. That's
yeah,
something that's different than TV. You can put on, oh, I like pins. I can sit here and work with my pins while I'm listening to Brad and Mike talk about their pins and maybe go off on an F1 tirade. Who knows?
yeah,
Whatever the rabbit hole of the week could evolve into. But the podcast also has led to you being able to be involved with the St. Jude and the relay and
hmm,
fundraising and supporting, great causes like that. So you know, it's something you enjoy doing, but it also has spawned into a way to give back and get the community to rally behind for those kind of extra things that happen to tie in with the platform and the people. And it's a unique way of, you know, helping to lead the charge from the stationary community of, hey, we're here, we're going to go help that cause. We're going to, and things like that. So I think that's a unique aspect as well that, that's not something that it took time to develop that kind of rapport and that ability to kind of help champion that, the St. Jude or the other things like that. So, it really shows because I mean, 15 years. I didn't realize it was that long. That's kind of crazy when you think about
yeah,
it. Because I know this is just my season 2, and when I started it, I had no plan. I was like,
hmm,
I'm just gonna keep doing this, and then eventually I got to like, oh crap, I've been doing this for 20 weeks in a row. I didn't think about maybe I should have a break or seasons or something like that. So it's
you should have a break.
yeah. So that's why I took a little bit of a break and I'm kind of breaking it up now because I didn't know. I just decided one day I'm going to start a podcast and,
Yeah,
here we are. But
yeah. So like all credit to Mike Hurley and Stephen Hackett who started Relay. It's the best decision I've ever made in my life. Aside from marrying my wife and having kids. Like to I Mike likes to joke that I'm his longest relationship in his life, but it's not a joke. It's actually true. He's known me and been with me longer than anyone else in his life besides his family. Um, and we predated Relay FM. And then getting to you don't always know everything about every like relationship you get into, or especially when it relates to business and how things, when money starts getting involved, how things are going to operate. Derek, I'm honest when I say this. I don't know what my cut is of advertising revenue. And I don't ask because I don't care. I don't know what our listenership is. I know it's going well because advertisers keep coming back and people tell me they like listening to the show. I'm good. Like it's just seriously seeing them and being lucking into two people who are aligned in more ways than just like, hey, let's make a podcast ways means so much. And then being able to get involved in like extra things that we've been able to build as an entire network. Like again, the pen guy is always the outlier, right? I'm on a tech network essentially. It's not all tech, but ostensibly that's what it was started as. But Mike always drags me along because like, oh, this is a thing and it's not going anywhere. And we just hope to keep doing it. And I'm glad you said that about the St. Jude stuff. And it's not just like that we do the St. Jude thing. It's that seeing the opportunity for others in the community to, raise awareness for other causes, right? Like that's super important to me. Like we could talk for hours more about like all the things like I want to see like in the community, but getting to lift up others and help others when they're in need. And, just really, really just have this overwhelming support from the stationery community is really cool. And, just being able to play a tiny role in that just makes me happy.
Well, I'm not certain if you have listened to all the episodes of the past, but you being on a tech network, there's a lot of us who work in tech
Mhm.
who are actually analog pin junkies, even if we didn't know it. And
Yeah.
there's been a couple of guests like Olive Octopus Inc., Addie from Stationery Stack, who, how did they get really into the hobby? Well, they're listening to this tech podcast, and then there's this
Hmm.
pin guy, and then they go down.
Yeah.
Your podcast has been referenced multiple times as being hey, wait, there's more. There's more
Yeah.
people like me who like these
Yeah.
things. And it was kind of a gateway into the community. And then you kind of find your tribe, as we
Yeah.
talk about, you find the other people who you share interest with, and develop those relationships of community, and then it kind of takes over from there. you know the gateway in has been the podcast, and that's cool to me. Just people hearing that, because the first time I saw that, I was in one of the local stationery stores, and someone's like, hey, I watched your YouTube video, and they were there buying their first fountain pen. I was like, it I, what do you say to that? Because I was still really new in the journey, and that was just unique to see that. And then yours has scaled so much more because of the time and things like that. But it's a unique way to share what you love with the community, and then the community kind of finds you and follows along. um but in terms of, now that you have this community, you've been able to do different collaborations with different things, or Pen Addict um, released products like the pen or the pen
Yeah.
Mark II or
Yeah.
things like that. So talk about a couple of the collaborations that you've done that you really like, or, if you might have a sneak peek of something that's on the horizon, talk about the collaboration part, because that is a unique aspect of, you've turned this into a business and a brand and a hobby, and now you're able to offer your own Pen Addict products to go alongside.
Yeah, I like doing collaborations. Like I've never really wanted to be like in just like a traditional retail space. That's not I would rather just like write and podcast and share and teach and learn and all that stuff as opposed to like managing retail, which like nothing wrong with that. Retail supports our whole industry. So support your local retailers, people. But that's never been like the side part of Pen Addict that I wanted to run. But I like making stuff. I like working with cool companies. And when I can work with one and make something neat that I can sell and like share with the community, like I don't know, it's just that it just makes me smile. Again, it's stuff that I want to use that I'm already using. In the case of like a Retro 51, I was already using the pen. I was like, well, hey, I don't even know when we made the first one. I guess we made 7 now. I think I was counting 7 or 8. And I was like, well, can we just make an orange one with like, you know, nickel hardware? I'm like, yeah, cool. And then like that just kind of started a lifelong relationship with Retro 51, even through like ownership change, right? Just being able to work with Retro 51 and do that. And, I've done some really cool things over the years. I obviously have an ink with Robert Oster that turned into an accidental hit. Um, I make a lot of things for funny reasons, just as a joke. Like when Robert Oster inks came out, he liked to put everything on fire. It's like lake on fire and ice and all this. I was like, well, he should just make an ink called Fire on Fire. It was like that would just line up with everything. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should do that. Maybe we should make an orange ink and just light it on fire. So I literally have an ink called Fire on Fire because it was a stupid joke. But now it's like a name. People just say it like unironically. Like, yeah, my favorite orange is Fire on Fire. I was like, do you realize what you're saying? Like, I don't think people realize what they're saying. But like, I just want to have fun doing this, right? So, I got Bennu to make like a 15th anniversary pen that looks like, confetti popping. And, I've had some cool orange Franklin Christophs. One of my favorite things I've ever done, which I apologize because this is never going to happen again. It was a one-off. Kakuyo, I got to work with Kakuyo to make their sketch notebook, their classic green notebook, and foil stamp the Pen Addict logo on the front. That's like, I don't know that I can ever top that. Like that's one of the sickest things ever. Um, Along those lines, I do have a paper product coming out that I literally cannot talk about. I don't have a physical sample here. But I have a paper product coming out this year that I've signed off on everything. Other than I don't have anything physical and I'm not at liberty to discuss, but that will be coming, I don't know, late spring ish,
Mm.
maybe late spring, early summer timeframe. Few months. And that's it. Like, I think I'm actually doing a little bit less collaborations, just because of the time and money that they take. Again, manufacturing's hard. You know, you start a conversation today, and certain products are going to be next year, and things like that. So, like, which is cool. I'm not really set up to like just hammer the collaborations all the time. But if I want to do something fun or I have an opportunity that I can jump at, I will definitely do. Um, I want to do an ink this year. It's been a while since I've done an ink. So actually, as we talk on this podcast, I sent an email today. I've had a good back and forth with someone that's willing to work with me. So we're in the stages of like, oh, okay. So now what do you want? So maybe I have an ink this year, but that might be it. Like, I don't know. Luckily, I'm spending enough time shipping spoke products. I don't have as much time to ship my own. So it's a good problem to have.
No, and I was gonna say, for those who don't follow through Twitch, things changing because you're having to ship more spoke products. So it's a
Yeah.
good problem to
Yeah.
have, that is going so well that it's, focusing on that and not trying to diversify too much.
Yeah.
It's better to specialize in some areas and then every so often because, I like collaboration items
Hmm.
to support creators or people, but also I can't buy everything. I'd like to
Right.
support it with, when it comes up, but not all the time. If it comes up all the time, then it's for me, it loses a little bit of the oomph, it loses a little
Yeah.
bit of the luster. If it's kind of like Twisby. It's Tuesday. There's another Twisby. I
We
would
j-
rather have some time between the process and
yeah,
try out and find other people to support versus getting the
totally.
same thing or different versions. So it's nice to have that kind of break between.
Yeah. We joke
So
about that at Spoke, right? Because we have been on a heater of releases, but again, if that only circles back to manufacturing is hard because some products get delayed, some products are on time, and then they all show up at once. And you're just sitting there going, what do I do? So there's going to be months where we don't release anything. But it's not lost on me that I can be a little bit hypocritical in that aspect.
yeah, but that's different because manufacturing does take time. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
honestly, there's enough of a demand for the products now. Sometimes you have to keep the iron, keep the fire going when things are going
Well,
well, because
I mean, yeah,
things might change and there might be a long lull.
yeah.
So you have to kind of,
We're a small volume company, right? We're not producing thousands of units of anything
yeah.
that can just be sold anytime. So yeah, I get it.
So we'd referenced this earlier, but social media has become a big part of the Pen Addict brand and getting out and talking. So you do your Twitch streams and you update the website, almost like clockwork, where you have the website articles and a giveaway and then newsletters for members and things like that. So whatever some of your favorite parts of just the social media aspect of turning the hobby into career and getting to engage with the community as a whole.
I just love helping people. I think I could like hang this up and teach about pens, except that wouldn't pay somewhere. I want to help. I always say I want to help someone find their next favorite pen. And, I do a lot of things with that in mind. I, try to balance like the things I talk about, not I go off into rabbit holes and, go into like very experienced user type stuff. But at the end of the day, it's always about the new user for me and the beginners and people just discovering me for the first time or the podcast for the first time and trying not to lose sight of that. It's easy to sometimes, like when you're recording every week and talking about different things. But yeah, I like talking to people about pens, whether that's in the written form. I like doing product reviews. Um, I like explaining like the pedantic little differences between two similar blue black inks and telling you how different these inks really are when you look at them and it looks like the same ink. And going, no, they are very different, and here's why. Like that it gets me excited. And then getting email from people saying, hey, like I need to learn how to use this fountain pen. I'm like, cool, let's talk about this. And then sharing that type of content. And I don't know, it's such a fun hobby, and like it's unnecessary, right? And it's like, it's like a little bit, consumerist, capitalist focus, right? We just buy stuff. So trying to like manage all of that thing in just like a fun package to be able to talk about a gelling pen that's $3, or Namiki that's $3,000, but still have the same like whimsy when talking about both of those products, that it's not that serious. And sometimes the $3 pen is dumb, and sometimes the $3 pen is great, and same thing with the $3,000 pen. Like sometimes it's awesome. And just trying to balance all of these things, talking about a hobby, right? At the end of the day, this is just people's hobbies. It's not, most of the listeners aren't running stationery businesses. Again, support your local stationery business. So yeah, like the one-to-one or one-to-many like communications is cool. I didn't know Twitch was going to work. I've done a few things where I've just like done it and it worked, like the podcast about pens. Twitch, I had no clue, but it's just one more place where instead of you listening to me on a podcast or you reading my blog, I can go, oh, look. And then I can show you how this writes. And then we can see what this ink looks like. And in a very non-serious fashion. I keep saying like fun and non-serious a lot. Like I take my work seriously. Like I take what I do seriously. But I want to present it in a fun, interesting way to where I meet people in person who've listened to me for years and we've never met, to where we can just like sit down and talk for an hour. Just to, like, I want people to feel like they know me. I'm pretty open. Like I'm a pretty open book for someone whose job is, it's crazy. My job is analog, but I'm perpetually online, right? Because that's how it works, right? Like I stream, I
Yeah.
podcast, I write. All of that is digital, but I'm talking about analog tools. So creating those relationships over the years is everything to me. And I take that deadly seriously to, be a good steward for the community, set a good example, be a good leader. Not that I'm saying I'm any of those things, but I do understand being around as long as I have, and having the following. Like I want to represent, I want to represent us well out there in the world. And I think I do. And mostly I just have fun doing it, and I'm going to keep doing it. Like, unfortunately, y'all can't stop me.
Well, one thing I appreciate of how you approach it is there's no gatekeeping. You
Yeah,
help support other people. Like when I was getting started with YouTube, I was like, hey, can I post a link to a video? Yes, post it. Wanting
100%.
other people to share because, you know, everybody has their own viewpoint.
Yeah.
And you and I happen to write similar style, print,
Hmm.
smaller nibs. So that was, to me, I was like, oh, this is great. But then when someone asks a question in a stream, you're going to focus on that person and answer their question. And then the
Yeah.
community in the chat is also saying, well, there's also this or this or this. So someone new coming in
Hmm.
for the first time is going to get information overload of more than they could ever have probably realized that, you know, here's 12 options in like 5 minutes because you're talking about it, of answering some questions, and then people in the chat are like, oh, there's also this or this. And it really emphasizes that community that is formed, and then your willingness to allow people to share you know, their creative ventures as well, because that's something in a lot of hobbies. There's always people who have the potential to ruin it for new people. And this hobby is too vast, and it's, you know, there's too many ways. Why? I mean, why would I care what you're writing with? If you like it, more power to you. It's
Yeah,
that the thing, and I think in the community in the hobby, there's a lot of FOMO, and that's like you're
sure.
talking about the $3 pen of the 3,000. You can write and have a great time with a $3 pen and some
Absolutely.
decent paper. You don't need a $3,000 pen if that fits your means and your desire and your ability. Go for it,
Yep.
but you don't have to have the latest and greatest, or you know go into debt for a hobby. No one should go into debt for something like this. And
Right.
like when I got started, the Chinese pins weren't where they are now, but now like the Asvine and some of those, they're great pins and they're,
Right.
a fraction of the cost. So it's getting harder to justify some of the name brand, or, you know, think of the maker pins. The maker pins, I would much rather support another maker than, a large company. That's one of those things, like I asked the question earlier, what would I tell myself in the future? I'd say, don't buy as many of the pins you thought you had to have early on. Wait and find the makers,
Yeah.
and you're going to like those more because then you can find the color or the theme or something that fits you better.
Hmm.
And, because there's some of the pins that, like my Pelicans, hardly ever use them. I've owned them forever, but they don't fit my writing. But
Right.
I also, it's that kind of weird thing where the more you learn, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm glad I own
Totally.
it, but it's not something I'm going to use with any kind of regularity.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that about like being in Twitch and you starting your videos and adding one to know if you could add that link and me saying absolutely. If I ever the only thing that will stop me is if I can ever stop uplifting other people who, like want to share what they're making in the stationary space, then I need to stop. But that's not gonna happen because that's like vitally important to me. I don't care. I don't care if you started yesterday and you're sending me your blog, let's go. I want to see what you got. Let's talk about pens and like let's share it with other people and like I want to be that conduit for other people just not just because I can, but like I really just believe in this stuff.
Well, and they might have a different viewpoint that you're like, oh, that's
Totally.
something I hadn't even thought of. And now I want to go try that. Like, in one of the streams today, this will come out after a while after recording, but put a drop of this ink in this ink and it's going to make this cool color. So you
Hmm.
were saying, well, I got to go try that. You get
Yeah.
that kind of curiosity if someone else found something that works for them. And it's like, well, I have both of those things. I got some Chow Kuro and I got some Fire on
Yeah.
Fire. So do I need to go mix that up and see what it
Yeah.
turns into? Why not? It's that kind of different viewpoints and ways to approach. It's neat because now it's
Yeah.
like a puzzle of like, well, I want to go see what it looks like, and that's one interesting thing because I've started to enjoy the live streaming aspect of the YouTube more than the videos in many ways
Hmm.
because you get to interact with people who are, in chat and answer questions and talk about things. And you can see that like when you approach Twitch, getting to interact with people, even on days when you're probably like, I'm not feeling the best. You might
Hmm.
still hop on and have a stream, and that might end up being a great day because something will, you know, two new
Exactly.
people might come in, and you're able to answer and help and guide them, and then that kind of, you know, makes it worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
But
That happens with the podcast a lot. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, I'm clocking in, gonna go do the podcast. I'm ready. Got all the notes. I'm prepared, like out the gills and whatever. I'm just like, okay, cool podcast. And then I'll finish the podcast. I'll just be bouncing off the walls, happy. Just like, it totally changed my attitude just doing that. One thing, just to reiterate something you said about hearing other people's thoughts on pens. That's the biggest piece of advice I give to people. I get a lot of people reaching out, hey, I want to start a blog. Hey, I want to start a channel, but like what can I do that's different from everyone else? I'm like, you can be you. Like I don't care if there's 10,000 Pilot G2 refills, your refill reviews, your Pilot G2 refill reviews not out there. So just do it. Like be yourself. Like I want to hear what you have to say. I don't care about if the product's been done to death. Like it hasn't been done to death by you, and that's what I want to hear.
no, and I fully get that because I appreciate the smaller the nib, the better. And most of the content you see out there is the opposite. It's like, I want to have the most shimmer written ink on the perfect paper. I was like, give
Yeah.
me the tiny nib, the needle point where I can write reverse needle point. I want it to be small because that
Yeah.
fits how I write. And that's, I like that because I've had a lot of comments on like different videos of, hey, thank you for making this because I write with small nibs too. I like to, it's a different viewpoint that it's going to find its own audience
Yep.
because there's people out there who are going to be searching for that kind of answer. But I think we're at the point just for the final question that I ask everybody as we start to wrap up. What is next for Brad Dowdy and the Pen Addict?
Mm. God, I never think about that. Like that's just one thing I'm not is a anything past a few months type of thinker. Um, I I kind of just can reiterate what I said. It's like I love what I do. I love talking about this stuff. I love what the community that I'm part of is and what this community represents, and I just want to keep uplifting that community and the people within it. And as long as can keep doing that, like I don't really have much to ask for. Like I'm not going to change who I am and what I do, as long as we can keep having fun, keep making it fun for other people, keeping just an open and welcoming environment. And, I'm going to keep blogging, I'm going to keep podcasting, I'm going to keep streaming on Twitch, I'm going to do the things I like to do and keep having fun with that. And there's no end in sight. Like I said earlier, you're not going to be able to stop me talking about pens for a long time. And yeah, I'm not going anywhere. But as far as like any like really, really specific plans, nah, we're just going to keep having fun and do it again tomorrow.
No, that's perfect. And
Mm,
one thing I'm going to speak on your behalf, and I hope you don't
mm,
mind, but if you see Brad at a pin show, go say hi. That's something I
100%.
know when talking to Sean Newton. There's some people who don't want to go talk to him because they're like, oh, that's Sean Newton. He's been
Yep.
the last thing he wants is for someone not to come up and start talking to him about pins. And I know that that's how, you're like that. And it's different
Hmm.
hearing it from someone else sometimes that, if you see someone at a show for any creator, we're doing this because we like talking about it. So if you
Yep.
see somebody, go talk to them. There's, that's why we're there. We're there to be consumers
Yep.
and evangelists for this hobby that we love. So definitely, whatever shows Brad ends up at, which
Yep.
it's always a mystery. So that's where you can follow along on the pin,
It's
his
a mystery to
website
me.
and things like that to see where he'll end up, because that's something I've appreciated. The whole Twitch community's kind of become my co-working thing. I've got a little TV in my office next to my desk and it just plays in the background as I'm working. And,
Yeah.
sometimes I might win a giveaway when I'm in a meeting and I'm like, oh, I won something, let me pop back over to that screen and confirm. But,
You better show up to
it's,
claim it.
yeah, you have to be present and you have to, choose a breakfast buddy or diner buddy and
We're in
whatnot. And if you're
dinosaurs
not
now
familiar
here.
with what we're talking about, definitely check out, the Pen
Mm.
Addict on Twitch, and there'll be links in the show notes. And Brad, I just want to say thank you for this. Has been a great conversation. We've never actually met in person. I think maybe
Nope.
once years ago, but
Yeah, years
it
ago.
seems
Yeah.
like we've known each other for years, and it's always
Yep.
great to have someone where you can have that instant rapport and conversation. So, um, any last words before we sign off?
No, I just appreciate you. Appreciate you having all these great guests. Having to follow like Lisa Van Ness and Addie Saucedo. That's hard shoes to fill right there. So keep bringing on the awesome guests and keep making us all better informed and smarter and having a great time here on your show. I appreciate you, Derek.
I appreciate it. And, be sure you can check this out on YouTube or also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode.